So I've really been kicking my ass lately about not being able to think straight. It's been a rough little while, emotionally and mentally for me. I feel like a broken record saying this so many times. My mom passed away, and then we drove down to the funeral to Louisiana from Chicago, and then came back up from the funeral, and then I started this job. Last week was my first week, and it was rough. I haven't had to adjust to people like this before, and like their ways of doing things that just seems so foreign to me. But anyway, it's really all consuming when I'm already so high functioning on my own. Like if you give me a situation, I can solve it without any intervention. It's a weird fit. So I'm having to try to make this work because I can't sacrifice the job. So to say the least, I've been like scatterbrained and I can't really focus, and I have so many things that I want to say about this book, but boy, I just can't get my shit together mentally. I have this packet of things to talk about, and I typically like to try and not read directly off of things because where's the fun in that? But I'm probably gonna wind up reading off of this for a bit, but they're really good talking points. So if you can handle the fact that I'm reading it off of something and not having a conversation with you like personally and it just coming straight from my brain like it normally would, I'm really sorry about that. So hopefully you can look past it and we can have a good time talking about Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. There are several sections to this little packet. There's narrative, voice, and structure, Cyrus Shams, a protagonist caught between worlds, relationships and intimacy, faith, God, and spiritual hunger, art, ethics, and representation, the ending and the choice to live, debatable, quotable moments and thematic wrap up. Bitch, quotable moments is this whole goddamn book. Okay, that's it. So I'm gonna go through those. Welcome to class. Get your notebooks, get your pens, laptops. I guess we're not in the 90s anymore. I hope you guys brought the textbook for this course. Class is in session. Let's go. This segment is fragmentation as form. How does fragmentation create a sense of emotional or spiritual dislocation? Emotional and spiritual those are accurate but light terms for Cyrus and what he goes through. Fragmentation genuinely just really mirrors Cyrus's like internal state. Cyrus's sense of self has been pulled apart by grief, addiction, and then spiritual yearning, like just wanting to believe in anything. Not religious, obviously, but just wanting to believe in anything at all. The non-linear sequencing and shifts in form, like the dreams, the footnotes, and the surreal elements, which fuck me up every time. I hate those parts, the surreal elements parts. But they really reflect how trauma disrupts like linear memory or any kind of narrative logic, which I think is a way more genuine experience that you get when reading. It's like we're not just watching Cyrus fall apart. We're in the dome with him. Like we're in the process of feeling these things with him. And this book truly felt to me like almost like I was reading a diary. It's not epistolary really in any way. It could be, I guess, seen that way, but in my opinion, it did not strike me as like epistolary at all. Like he was texting me consistently or calling me and we talked on the phone every day and he was just pouring his heart out to me about how he felt. It really felt like Cyrus as a character and as a narrator, reliable or not, just really felt like a genuinely real person. Like I want to go find him in real life and chat him up because like I just want to hug him. He's been through a lot. Do I feel closer or more alienated from Cyrus because of the disjointed style? I felt closer because I think that disjointed style and the fragmented form of writing is very human, and I think that gives us kind of like a raw sense of what he's going through, and it's not filtered or painted up any kind of special way to like present to you like how people give like the perfect picture and put it on social media and it's like, oh, I'm living a happy life. There are some books where characters are displayed that way or depicted that way, I guess is a better word, and I hate that. Like I am a huge fan of literary fiction because of the deep dive that you get to do with characters, like specific characters. So I certainly felt closer, but that's also kind of just like the lens that I read through when I'm reading, of just like looking to know everything that I possibly can about this character and just observing everything, trying not to make any kind of opinions or conclusions or judgments too soon. Like I want to get to know them and know what they're all about and what they're doing and how they think and act. Part B of this is lyrical poetic prose, and boy, is that accurate. What's the effect of Akbar's poetic language in a novel-length format? If you don't know this, he is a poet. This is his first novel. That's not poetry. His poetic language in novel length format. Should it even be a question, honestly? I don't know. To me, The entire novel, every sentence had like an intention. Every sentence was intentional. What's the effect of Akbar's poetic language in novel length format? Every single line, every single sentence, every word in this book is intentional. It's not heavy content, but you certainly cannot skim it. Like, the entire book demands your attention, and it's so worth every ounce of attention you give it. I cannot say enough good things about this novel. Every single page feels deliberate, and it's loaded with meaning. How does this prose style shape your reading pace, tone, or emotional investment? I think because of how intentionally you can feel that this book is written, it increases my level of emotional investment because I trust him. Like, I trust the writer. And I said something in a previous video, I think I published it. Like, I don't think I cut that out. But I said something in a previous video about how we got to the point where Cyrus and Z and Sad James were sitting and talking, and then Z was like, oh, this reminds me of that artist that's doing that like death speak exhibit in Boston. She's like terminal cancer, terminal like illness, and she's in this museum and she's living her final days in the museum so people can come and talk to her. And it's called Death Speak. So she's making like art out of her death. And then they have this back and forth. Z calls Cyrus out on like his bullshit, like self-sabotaging, enabling himself to fail over and over again. And then we get to a point where Cyrus is, it's the last line of the chapter, whatever, is like Cyrus saying, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. Or I think I'm gonna do it. And then he goes to Boston and he meets Orchidea, and then the book happens. So we got to that point and I finished that chapter, and I made the comment that that's a huge move to make. As a person sitting writing something that is not finished, is not probably not even mentioned to very many people on earth, and it just lives in your head, and you're writing this, you get to that point, you're putting so much pressure on yourself as an author, or Kaveh Akbar is, or was, I guess, as an author, to live up to the expectation that you plant in a reader's mind. Because to me, that was so pivotal that I was just like, oh my god, this is perfect. I'm a sucker for anything like even slightly entertaining if you make it emotional and poetic and beautiful. Like I'm jumping in feet first, deep in, with like a fucking cinder block tied to my ankles. I'm all the way into it, and it's gonna take a lot to really make me not like something. So I said that way, like I said all of that, I felt that way about it. Now that I finished the book, I think that it is beautiful, and I think that the more I read, and the more we were given just little bits here and there, nothing like crazy, it's just like dropped, and then the rest of the novel is the aftermath of it. It was developmental all the way through, and I just think it was incredible. So for me, the more I read, the more I trusted Kaveh Akbar to not disappoint me, and he kind of did a little bit at the ending, but that's only because I'm not a fan of surrealism and ambiguity. I don't want like an ambiguous ending where I can like pick and choose your ending or my ending. And tell me how the story's supposed to happen. I don't want to have to like infer something or assume that this happened or that didn't happen or whatever. I want you to tell me. I don't like the having to make decisions. I read as a form of escapism and as a way to like develop my brain more, and I don't read to continue making decisions. So don't make me make decisions like having to think of like what the fuck the ending of this book means, bro. Ugh. Section 2. Cyrus Shams, the protagonist caught between worlds. How does Cyrus's in-between status, like Iranian American, recovering addict, believer / doubter, shape his worldview? Cyrus is always in between. He's never settled. The whole point of his character is to be in limbo and to represent like instability. He's not fully like, for him, he's not fully American, but he's not fully Iranian. He's not fully recovered, but he's not completely fallen back into alcoholism. He's not a believer, but he's also not an atheist because he's looking for something to believe in. He questions everything as a result of that, I think. He's never had anything solid or anything set to really go by or believe in or trust. So he's constantly looking for a boundary or like a hard line that defines something. Some examples that this points out is he's looking for a boundary between life and death, between faith and doubt, between like self and the other. His lack of rooted identity. Jesus, that sounded country hick of me. His lack of rooted identity fuels both his intellectual hunger and his existential despair. I think that's fair. Do you think Cyrus romanticizes pain and death? Why is he so obsessed with martyrdom? I hate that word. Martyrdom. I can't, it just won't roll off the tongue for me, so. Of course he romanticizes pain and death. His mother was, well, he lived a lie. That felt very Phoebe Buffay. He's been living a lie. He thought something happened to him and to his father, and he believed his entire life. I don't remember exactly how old he was in this book. I'm gonna assume like late 20s, 30, early 30s. But his whole life, he thought that his mother was just obliterated in the sky, like turned to dust by some bomb from the US or missile or whatever over a mistake. And then he became his father's problem. Even though his father, don't even get me fucking started about Ali hounding Roya and being like, I will do the lion's share of the work if you just give me the kid. Bro, that's crazy. Okay, that's crazy. No one handled anything right in this book. No one did anything right. But yes, of course, he romanticizes everything. His mother, like there was no meaning and there's nothing to go on. So as a child, he grew up without a mother and he had a father who slaved away at a chicken slaughtering factory. Like and then as soon as he got handed off to like his own like just barely into adulthood, his father kicked the bucket. Just a lot of questions exist from this like situation that happened to all of them. And it even happened to Roya, Orchidea, whatever we're gonna refer to her as now. But like, bitch, where were you? You could have come back for your kids. Like, I know you didn't want, but you have the responsibility. This is all crazy. Crazy. The way my jaw dropped is I found out every single thing that happened in this book, and I think I'll insert where it's appropriate or where it feels right the audio clips, because the second I thought that I was getting close to something really crazy happening, or if I felt like it was getting close, or like maybe I glimpsed something on the next line. But to get back to the point, yes, of course he romanticizes pain and death. It's the only way that he can make sense of any of the trauma that he's gone through, mentally or emotionally. The idea of like martyrdom, or his considering like the idea of someone being a martyr when they die, applies meaning to their death. And his whole life he has lived as though his mother's death was meaningless. So of course he's obsessed with this. He's looking for some kind of way to like resolve the situation. Is Cyrus a reliable narrator? Emotionally, yes. We're inside his pain and contradictions in a deeply sincere way. Factually, no. His hallucinations, surreal experiences, and fragmented memories mean that we're not always sure what's literally real, because he's also not fucking telling us, and by he I mean you, Kaveh. But that unreliability becomes part of the truth of his character. His confusion and instability are the point. Sure. Relationships and intimacy. What does Z represent in Cyrus's life? Z is both a mirror and a counterpoint. I can't generate any thoughts about this topic at all for some reason. I appreciate what they had, and I loved how messy and how real and intimate the moments that we had between Z and Cyrus are. I think that the way that the queerness was depicted was nice. Z is both a mirror and a counterpoint to Cyrus. Like him, they are Iranian American and engaged with art and spiritual searching, but their sense of self feels more grounded. While Cyrus drifts, Z sets boundaries. They represent a kind of love that's intimate but not possessive, in a way of being in the world that Cyrus both envies and fears. In many ways, their relationship reveals Cyrus's inability to fully accept or contain love. Second prompt is, why does their relationship fall apart? It falls apart because Cyrus can't sustain the emotional intimacy that Z needs, and possibly because he's more in love with the idea of a connection than with the day-to-day work of a real relationship and what that entails. Z can see this, that's no secret. Their relationship is intense, but most certainly not balanced. Cyrus is chasing some sort of like transcendence, and Z just wants a chill reality. And then ultimately Cyrus's internal chaos just drowns out the relationship's potential. How does Orchidea's presence change the arc of the novel? She arrives later in the novel, but she completely shifts the emotional and philosophical center of what's happening. Of the plot. This whole like death speak situation, her radical performance art, and then ultimately her decision to commit suicide completely like destroys and reshapes, and then tries to reframe, I guess, Cyrus's concept of martyrdom. Does Cyrus learn anything from Orchidea's death? This is what frustrates me. Not in a simple or redemptive way. He doesn't have a neat revelation, but her death becomes the moment that fractures his delusion. It's the spiritual and emotional rupture that finally shakes him loose from his obsession with dying. By seeing the violence and finality of her choice, he begins, almost reluctantly, to consider choosing life, even if it doesn't feel holy. Or like it's an intentional thing that has a purpose. How does Cyrus's relationship with his mother shape the entire novel? I'm correcting this to say, how does Cyrus's relationship with his mother, in his head, not Orchidea, the idea of her that lives with him most of his life until he actually meets her. How does his relationship with his mother shape the entire novel? His mother's death is the original trauma around which all other situations orbit. And he like essentially mythologizes her, creates her into this like urban legend kind of his life, not just as like a parent, but like a almost holy figure, or like an idol, and obviously a martyr. His imagined conversations with her are some of the most poetic and emotionally raw parts of this entire book. She's the presence behind every question that he asks about faith, death, and love. It's almost like this, if he's without the idea of her, or if that didn't exist, it's like she supplies gravity, because I feel like if there weren't this idea of his mother, dead or alive, to hang on to and to keep coming back to and like hitting all things against over and over again for comparison, for anything, then he just would fly off into orbit. And he very much gives me that impression, especially with the surrealist parts of this. Ooh, is Cyrus grieving her or chasing her? Love. Both. Personally, I think he's grieving her absence, but chasing the version of her that could somehow heal his pain, or heal the massive like gash in him as a person that he's never gonna be able to figure out. Like the truly a damaged good, and I mean that with like all my heart, in the nicest, most tender, loving way that I possibly can. I love Cyrus as a character. Ooh, how, when I said that mainstream things can entertain me so easily, this is an example, I think, of how simple things are in my brain sometimes. Like I feel like I'm really high functioning in some areas, and then in other areas it's just like, bitch, how the fuck did it take you that long to get to that conclusion? Arash, Cyrus's uncle, was like in the war was the like angel riding at night, the angel of death or whatever. I just realized that that's what this is on the cover of the book. You know how long I've been looking at this book? And I just now realized that's what that was. His obsession with martyrs is in part an attempt to elevate her death into something sacred, but martyrdom requires a cause and her death was senseless. His grief is the constant pressure point in his life. By the end, he's forced to stop chasing her as an ideal and begin mourning her as a person. Crazy. And I think personally that he's gonna have to mourn her as the idea that he's had for so long of his mother that died in the plane bombing, missiling, whatever, and then Orchidea separately, because he did not know her as his mother, and she passed away as Orchidea. He never got to go back and interact with her as his mother, and I think that's insane that she did that to him. That woman's crazy when I think back about this. But also, she'd already had the conversations over and over about like martyrdom, and it was kind of the perfect opportunity. So these are not my actual choices that I would make. This is just my opinion of what's going on in this book. I'm not saying that I believe any of this, truly. It's just, it's a wild, I want to know how long the storyline lived in Kaveh Akbar's head. How long have you been writing this book? Part 4, Faith, God, and Spiritual Hunger. Does Cyrus believe in God? No, he wants to believe in something. He's spiritually hungry, but existentially skeptical. He longs for transcendence, for something sacred, but he can't surrender to dogma. His faith is poetic, mystical, and unresolved. He prays without belief, not for salvation, but for connection. He's a seeker, not a convert. Part 5, Art, Ethic, and Representation. What questions does the novel raise about representing suffering, especially as an artist from a marginalized background? Martyr is haunted by the question, who gets to represent suffering and at what cost? Cyrus is drawn to the spectacle of pain, his own and others. The confrontation with the museum curator is key here. It critiques the institutional consumption of trauma, especially Middle Eastern or Islamic suffering, as aesthetic or political capital. The novel suggests that even well-meaning artists can fall into exploitation when they turn pain into performance. How do Cyrus and Orchidea differ in their approach to art? Orchidea's art is political, radical, and embodied. Her performances are acts of resistance and vulnerability. She puts her literal body on the line. Cyrus, on the other hand, is more theoretical. He collects stories and ideas but struggles to act. Orchidea's death becomes a kind of final performance, one that Cyrus cannot ethically witness without being changed. She lives the martyrdom he romanticizes, and it forces him to reckon with the gap between ideology and embodiment. I think that's really important. I think it's important to also, I don't know if I can fully do that with the scope of it and how deep it could get, but I think it's worth getting into that I want to see Roya's perspective. Like, I want to hear about things with Layla in more depth than we did here, and from her perspective specifically, up to that moment of her like switching information with her and then sending Layla to get on the plane. But I wonder how, like, that switch flip to push Roya into being an actual artist and becoming Orchidea. I want to see when that happened and what that was like. But she lives the martyrdom he romanticizes, and it forces him to reckon with the gap between ideology and embodiment. That, to me, is so important to recognize, that Cyrus is heavily in the ideology mind camp of martyrdom, and I think that he talks about wanting to be a martyr and about ending his life. So, like, it is just, like, it's obvious that that's what he's gonna do, and that that's what he needs to do. If he's gonna write this book, he's gonna write the Book of Martyrs and then off himself and become a martyr, and that'll be a story if the book ever gets famous or takes off or whatever. It's most certainly not as easy to jump from the ideology to the actual action. I don't think it's that easy for anybody that maybe is mentally sound or medicated. I think it's crazy that he thought that it would be that simple. But having read the whole book and being like in his thoughts through the entire book, it really feels like that's what he's meant to do. But as a person, when I really think about Cyrus, I don't think that he would be able to do that. He would need it to be like done to him. Like to be overdosed on something without him knowing somehow. I don't know how that would work. Don't ask me. But is Cyrus complicit in the spectacle of the pain that he studies? Yes, and the novel is painfully self-aware about that. His obsession with martyrdom can read as voyeuristic. He consumes others' deaths in his search for meaning. That is so deep, oh my gosh. But the novel doesn't let him off the hook. His guilt, especially after Orchidea's death, becomes central. He realizes too late that witnessing isn't neutral. It implicates the witness. The question becomes, what do you do with what you've seen? That feels like a mic drop question. And I guess that's appropriate because we're moving on to the next section. The ending and the choice to live. Why is Orchidea's suicide the emotional climax of the novel? It wasn't for me. She was already planning to be dead, like per illness. So anyway, the answer says, it's the shattering of the myth. Her death is deliberate, performed, and public, a literal martyrdom, but it's also devastating. There's no beauty or redemption in it, only pain and aftermath. Which I didn't think about on like a community-sized scale until right this minute. That's crazy. All the people that went to go see her then are like, oh my gosh, that woman I talked to is dead. The reflection on that. Maybe I do get her point. Okay. Maybe I'm not as simple as I thought I was. There's no beauty or redemption in it, only pain and aftermath. It forces Cyrus to see the violence in his own longing for sacred death. It's not a metaphor, it's real. And that reality demands a different kind of reckoning. What does it mean for Cyrus to choose life? It's a quiet, almost reluctant choice, but it's revolutionary for him. After everything, his grief, his addiction, his philosophical spiral, he decides not to follow Orchidea into the afterlife. He chooses to stay, even without clarity or holiness. It's not triumphant, but it's real. Life, flawed and uncertain, becomes the sacred thing he has been searching for all along. Does the ending offer hope? Yes, but not in a sentimental way. The hope is in the refusal to die and the acceptance of ambiguity. I don't accept ambiguity. It pissed me off. The ending affirms that meaning is not found in grand gestures, but in small acts of staying alive, of continuing. There's no final revelation, but there is movement. It's a deeply spiritual ending, precisely because it rejects spiritual closure. That's fair. Confusing, surreal, but fair. Part 7 is quotable moments and thematic wrap-up, and I personally, I have all the quotable moments right here. Like, there's a ton of them. So that's my wrap-up on Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I didn't spoil anything for you, which would be hard because I warned you at the beginning, and this would be your choice. So, anyway, mild housekeeping. Currently reading Quicksilver by Callie Hart on my Kindle. The Anthropocene Reviewed by Greene. I read this on the bus on the way to work and on the way home from work every day. And it's really nice because short stories are quick to get through and it feels good. My camera's about to die, so I'm hurrying. I finished Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors, and it will be next on my video essay list. And then I'm about to start baby reading War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. So keep an eye out for these in the near future, and I will see you soon. Bye.